Hey team, my name's Chad. Thanks for taking the time to watch our training video on our portable drape kits. All of our kits are made up of three main parts. We've got our bags containing our upright poles, another lot of bags containing our cross poles, and then a road case which will always contain your drape, your base plates and your spigots. I'll explain all of these components as we set up, but we're going to start by putting up our frame sections. Now, whenever we're setting up our drape system, we always start with our base plates. Our base plates is going to be what holds our upright bars up. Now, to do that, we need a spigot. The spigots screw in to these base plates, and then the upright poles sit over the top of that, holding it up. Now, as you can see, there's multiple hole options where we can put this spigot in. We need to pick which hole we are depending on where the pole is going to be in relation to, say, a wall or in the middle of the room or in a corner. If your pole is going to be, for your drape, is going to be up against the wall, you're going to want your spigot to be in this side hole. That way, when you push the base plate up against the wall, the pole is going to be hard up against the wall. Same if you had your base plate in the corner of a room, you're going to want to put the spigot in the corner so the pole pushes right into the corner of the room. And likewise, if you're in the middle of the room, say you're partitioning a room into two, you're going to want the spigot in the middle so your pole sits right in the middle of them. For this example, we're going to put it right in this side one. Now, the spigots always come with the screws inside them. And when we pack them back up, we always return the screws inside the spigot to make sure they don't get lost. Now, on your base plate, you'll see that on one side, the hole is flush, but on the other side, there's a recess for the screw head to go in. That means we need to put the screw head in from the base so it sits flush like that. From there, once we've got that on, we then just screw the spigot onto, around the right way, screw the spigot onto that. So I've gone ahead and pre-prepped two base plates with their spigots. Now we're going to start to put the upright poles on. Now, in your curtain call bags, you've got two different types of bags. One have got 4 pockets in them, and the other one has got 8 pockets in them. The 4 pocket ones are for our big upright poles, and the 8 pocket ones are for our smaller crossbar pieces. So this is one of our telescopic upright poles, which should then just sit smoothly over that spigot, and away you go. Now I'll just pull out a second one to put on the other one. Always be careful when pulling these out not to accidentally tip them up above the horizontal, as they're telescopic and the end will start to pull out. If the end does pull out, you'll find that it won't go back in. Now, to do this, you pull the bar up and push this silver locking ring up. That then releases the pipe to then go back down. As soon as you let that locking ring go back down, the pole won't go back in. But always remember, never lift it past the horizontal, otherwise it's going to come flying out. So once I've got these two in position, I need to know where to space them in my venue. Now, I see a lot of people try to put these up, then try and get all their drape and everything together, and then while the whole thing is up in the air, trying to shuffle it around to try and get their spacing right. It's going to break the drape and it's going to make your life really slow and painful. The better way to do it is pre-pull out your crossbar piece and measure before you put it up. Now, the crossbar pieces are telescopic as well. So this is in their shortest mode. As you pull them out, it will click once with this little piece in there. Then we push that in and it will start to slide again, and until it clicks a second time with the locking pin in there. Now, this is a full 3-meter extension, which is the same width as your drape. So if you're just doing a standard run at full length, you're going to want to go out the full way to 3 meters. Now, if I put these down next to my uprights, I realize that my uprights are too close together. Now's the time, before I have any drape or anything on them, just to push them out and re-space it so I know that that's the right space apart. Now I'm going to continue to do that for all of my drape, no matter what I'm doing, 12 meters, 6 meters, and pre-space them all out first. And then we'll start to put our drape up. Now, each of our drapes are individually bagged, and each section is 3 meters wide by 3 meters high. Now, we keep them individually bagged, one for neatness and just being able to get them in and out of the cases, and two, just to try and keep them clean as well and keep the dust off them. So when we pull this out, we will see that the drape has been nicely rolled. We'll have a look at how to do that properly later. Now, when I unroll this drape, we will start to see the difference between the front and the back of it. Now, the front of the drape has got a nice shiny velvet finish on it. The back of the drape is more of a matte finish where you see all the seams and everything. So it's really important to get it facing the right way around. The other part of this drape is our attachments for it. Now, there are two options of being able to get this onto the pipe. One is a Velcro system where you would actually, if the pipe or anything was already up in the roof, you could then bring this up and use these Velcro straps to then be able to Velcro around the pipe and then secure it like so. Now, that is all well and good when the pipe is already in the roof, but it doesn't quite look as neat as the other option, which we prefer to use with our systems. The other option is that all along the top here, there's a giant pocket to be able to thread the crossbar through. This looks much, much neater and is a lot quicker for your setup. So that's the way that we're going to do it. Okay, I'm now going to try and thread the pole through this pocket all the way. Now, it's important to be really careful with this, as trying to force this over time could really easily see the pole puncture a hole through the edge of the curtain, which you don't want to do. Try and keep the curtain as straight as you can, and then thread the pole nicely and gently down through the pocket, easing it up as you go. Remember, it's not a race. Once you rip the top of these, it's very hard to fix them, so always please be gentle with them. Now that we've got our crossbar threaded through our drape, there's still one more thing that we need to do before hooking it up onto our upright poles, and that is to make sure, double check, that all of our spacing and positioning of our upright poles, our base plates, are correct before we put this up. Once this is up and everything's assembled, you don't want to move around the entire drape system while it's all rigged in the air. One, it's got a risk of falling over, and two, these are fairly delicate hooks and mounting points up here, which means that it's really easy to bend and twist and destroy them if you're trying to pull and redirect the entire drape while it's up in the air. So before we put this up, I'm going to double check our spacing to make sure that I've got the correct spacing in between them. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is always do this with more than one person. So for this, I'm going to bring in Renee to give me a hand. So I've now got Renee holding the other end of this to keep it upright. But now I'm going to hook this crossbar onto the upright system. Now you'll see that there's a hook on this crossbar. Obviously the hook needs to be pointed down because it's going to slot in to this upright and then hook into place. Now on this upright, we have these slats which are in the middle and these slats which are on the top. Now there's no particular right or wrong way to do it. What it allows you to do is do a 90-degree turn when you're assembling this in a room. But by default, we prefer to use the top slots on those because it helps to hide the top of this chrome point and just makes the drape cover that a lot better. So I'm going to position that so I've got one top slot pointing here, which means, which you probably can't see, I've got a top slot pointing laterally with that. Now I'm just going to lift that up, hook that in, nice and easy. Now, and just want to point out again that I'm doing this with this in the low position, not with this already pushed up to its full telescopic height. I'm doing it as low as possible so it's nice and easy to reach. Once that's in, I can then pull the drape across, and then it actually has Velcro already pre-made into that, which I can then loop around with this Velcro tab here, loop that around, Velcro it back on itself, and that will hide that pole nice and neatly. So now that I've got my end all hooked up, Renee's going to now lift up her end and hook it into that top slot. And now, Velcro it up, make it look nice and pretty. Now it is really important, like I said before, then when one person's getting their side hooked up, that you're not leaving the other side hooked all the way down to the ground and doing a big 45 degree. You always got to keep them upright. The more you bend them, twist them, turn them, you're just going to destroy these mounting pieces real fast. So always make sure you're doing it with 2 people and make sure you're trying to keep it as upright as possible. So now that we've got all this top section all neat and nice, and we're going to assume that this is our entire drape run done. Obviously, if you're doing multiple sections of drape, you want all of this, all of the frame and everything connected together with the drape on and all Velcroed up before we push it up to the height that you're going to want it. It's a lot easier to work with it on the ground. And the other thing is you really don't want it where the first section is up, second section's down and on an angle. The more that you ever have these on different angles between the one telescopic pole being up and the next one down, just like when you're rigging it, the more you have it on an angle, the more it's going to bend and destroy the mounting clips. So it's really important for Renee and I now to raise this up to the height that we want, but doing it at the same time. And if I had 4 or 5 uprights, I'd try as hard as I can to get 4 or 5 people, one on each upright, and try and do it all at the same time so it's not twisting and bending as we go. Now, like we showed before with the telescopic poles, if we grab the top section of the pole and put it up, as soon as we let it go, it won't come back down as long as that collar locking ring is in the down position. If we need to pull it back down, we'll push the collar back up and then the telescopic pole will come back down. So Renee, we're going to start to push this up until we see the bottom of the drape just kiss the bottom of the floor, so we've got no slack on the floor. So let's start to go up, bit at a time. And there we go, beautiful. Now you may need to have a different height in your venue depending on what you need, but by default if you're putting these up, always just have it so the bottom of the drape is just touching the ground. It's just the neatest way to do it. One thing to note, if we were adding multiple sections of drape onto this to make a longer run, is that I wouldn't actually Velcro this top part around, and instead I would leave this part showing, so then I could take my next bit of crossbar and just connect it straight into the next slot on the top. Or if I needed to go off on a different angle, I'd just pick the appropriate angle of where to slot that in on. It is important to pick the appropriate angle because these things don't like being bent side to side. It will wreck it pretty fast. So always pick, if you're going straight on, use the slot that's straight on. If you're going on an angle, use the appropriate slot. And then once the next crossbar's in, you'll be able to Velcro those 2 bits of drape together at the top. Now that it's up in the air, I can show you that the edges of all of the drapes has Velcro on the inside of it, which means that if I had multiple sections joining up here and then I had a gap that I needed to cover, I could actually get one bit of drape and then have this bit of drape fold over and Velcro all the way with tabs going from top to bottom to actually close up that, so making sure that they don't open back up. If we're only doing a single section, we can obviously wrap it around the pole and make it nice and neat. But if it was to continue all the way from top to bottom, we would just Velcro the 2 drapes together so it just became one continuous piece. So now that we've got the whole thing set up, it's time to pull it back down again. So I'm going to talk you through how to pack it up safely in a way that you're not going to damage the gear and not going to damage yourself. First of all, the same as when it's going up, it's got to come down all of the uprights together at the same time when you're lowering it, again, not to be twisting and bending it. So I've got Renee on the other end and she's going to be dropping this down at the same speed that I am. So to drop it back down, like we said before, it's all about these locking collars and making sure that that is then being pushed up so you can release this down. Now, a few things to watch out. As you're going to be holding on to the inside pole with your hand, and to initially get it going, you're going to give it a little bit of upwards lift and push the collar up and then start to bring it down. Now, the big trap is not to keep your hand on it and pull it all the way back down to here where your hand then meets this collar, because it will pinch the inside of your skin there and it hurts a lot. So don't do that. So I'm going to push it up, push the collar up, let it drop down, and bit by bit I'm then going to stop, re-grab, stop, re-grab, and keeping my hand the whole time well away from this collar so I'm not pinching my hand on it. Also, be sure that you're always holding this, that you're not then lifting the collar up and just letting the whole thing slide down. that's going to break it very fast. So we'll just keep going down a bit at a time until we get to the bottom. If these locking rings do start to stick, which can happen, it is aluminium, so with heat and things like that, these can start to stick. The best way to get these unstuck is, first of all, to be pushing the inside pole up as hard as you can while trying to lift the collar to try and get it unstuck. The other thing to do is to have a look at these little balls, which I'll show you now. So if these locking rings are stuck, it is because these little balls in here, which is actually the brakes on it, have been wedged and stuck in their position regardless of what the locking ring's doing. Twisting the inside pole doesn't help, won't do a thing. And also trying to reef it down or hit this is not going to dislodge those balls, so don't even try. The best way to do is actually just get a screwdriver or something to lever it in between the locking collar and that small little ball. And then while levering the ball up, because our ultimate goal is to dislodge this ball, is we're going to push that up and lever the ball up. And then once all those balls are loose, it should just slide back down really easy. That's the only way to get it unlocked if pushing it up and pushing the collar up doesn't work. Okay, so now that our drape is all in its lowest position, it's now time to start taking it apart. So reverse order of what we did, we're going to undo the drape, undo the Velcro, okay, and then Renee and I are going to lift this off at the same time and lower that down. Now, I'm going to start to slide the pole out from my end while Renee holds on to the drape, making sure that it doesn't get stuck as we go. And again, patience is the key with this. If it's ever jammed, don't just try and yank it out because you're just going to rip something. Okay, cool. So then we can let drape go down to the floor. And again, reverse order, like when we set this up, I'm going to push in that little locking pin and fold down the crossbar to its smallest position. Okay, now again, upright poles, reverse order, it's a simple lift off, and then they're just going to be able to slot back into their bags. Okay, spigots and base plate, very simple. Putting your finger on the bottom of or an Allen key onto the bottom of the screw, then just untwist the spigot, and that should just come off nice and easy. Always remembering then to take that screw and re-screw it back into the bottom of the spigot for storage to make sure you don't lose them. So now that I've got that off, I'll just thread that back in just a little bit, just to make sure I don't lose that. Another key thing, try not to sit these base plates down flat on the ground without a spigot on them, only because they're really annoying then to try and pick back up. So if you ever have to put them down, try and lean them up against something, preferably something that's not on wheels as it might push it over, or if you can, just straight into your case. Now, the most important part about packing away our drape systems is the drape itself and trying to keep this nice and keep it pretty. So, as we said before, the drape has a pretty side and a non-pretty side. What we're going to do is lay this out on the floor, keeping the pretty side up, just to try and minimize how much dirt and dust and things it gets on it. Actually, Renee, we might actually turn 90 degrees for the camera. I'll take that. So again, always a two-person job to try and fold these up. So keeping the pretty side up, we're just going to take the corners, kind of like a bed sheet, and go together. Now, already from this point now, being the pretty side in on the pretty side, it's 100% protected and nothing else can touch the pretty side of it, which we're trying to keep clean. So then we're going to fold that again, and we'll probably just go one more time. Yep, and again. Okay, and then down on the floor. Now I'm going to start rolling from my end, so all of the Velcro is on the inside of it, and we'll just roll that up. It doesn't have to be super tight. There's not really any benefit to that. But the main thing is you want it at a good size like this that is then going to fit into the drape bag. Again, very easy to do with two people, not easy to do with one. Once it's in your drape bag, we'll just pull the drawstring on it. Again, just be careful with these drawstrings. I see a lot of guys yanking it, and you can very easily tear the stitching on these bags. So just nice and easy, pull that together, then just get the little lock on it, push that down, done, and in the case. So we'll then pack all these away, but again, these crossbars, there's 8 of those, well, enough positions for 8 in their bag and enough positions for 4 of the uprights in theirs. Make sure you get them in the right bags, otherwise you're going to get to the end and realize it doesn't all fit. But that should do us for now. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch our training video, and have a great service.